Hi, everybody. Welcome to ADU1 City Spotlight. I'm Helen, and this is my partner, David.
Hey, everybody joining in today. Thought I would hop on here, get a nice change of pace.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. Today is Wednesday, May 4th, and we are going to be covering the amazing city of Burbank, California. I just recently realized that I didn't have a video yet on Burbank, and Burbank has specific rules to Burbank. But even if your property is not in Burbank, please stick around. This will still pertain to you, and anything that is just very specific to Burbank, I will always make sure to point out. But most of the general rules as far as what you're allowed to do, it kind of goes for every single city throughout California. So, and also if you're coming from our flyer, as mentioned, stick around to the end. We will just briefly describe the new balcony and deck inspection rules under SB 326 and SB 721. So that way you can hear about that, which does pertain to condos and apartment buildings with 3 or more units. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up Burbank's direct ordinance so we can go over that. So that way, in case you are scrolling through later, you'll have it exactly as we went over today.
As Helen's doing that, I just want to sort of mention that Burbank is great for investors with respect to the lax laws on building ADUs. We've heard from a lot of our clients that they like to be in Burbank because of the nature of the city itself. It's a really pretty town, and also because you can build up tall. And Helen will get into that, but it's very, very attractive.
Okay, thanks, David. So you should all be able to see this. I will zoom in a little in case that helps. Let me just make sure. Yeah, so this is directly from Burbank's Municipal Code, Division 3 for ADUs and junior ADUs. And as always, I will describe both the rules for single-family homes as well as multifamily properties, since there are a lot of differing rules for both. And that's pretty cohesive across California with the differences. So again, even if your property is not in Burbank, still tune in because you will still at least find out the general rules, how many you can do, and so forth.
Right, these rules are consistent throughout the state.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
The rules came down, at the state level, and every city is required to implement a certain minimum. But
Right.
Some cities are allowed to have more permissive rules, right?
Yes, exactly. And as you'll see here, Burbank is actually one of the cities that, as David mentioned, you can build higher. There aren't too many cities like this in California. So this is particularly helpful when building on top of detached garages. So we'll get into that as we scroll through. So let's see. So again, this is directly from Burbank's Municipal Code. And I will really just go over the pertinent information regarding, multifamily or single family and so forth. This part is discussing that it's an initiative to increase housing.
Yeah, and just a general note, even if you're not looking at Burbank specifically, if you want to get a sense of what your city will allow, check the municipal code or go online and search municipal code for the particular city that you want to look up, and then ADU or ADU rules for that city, and then find the ADU rules as they're codified in the municipal code. It'll give you the straight source, and you'll get an idea of what's required and what isn't. And surprisingly, these things are easy to read, right?
Yeah,
you don't need to be a lawyer or anything like that to understand it.
No, exactly, and that's why I use it directly to kind of help you point out the exact areas that relate to the questions you may have. And as David mentioned, always make sure it's the exact municipal code from that city and not a third-party website, because I've noticed these third-party websites just kind of have just standard rules. The 25% or whatever it is, without really the specific ones to that city. So just make sure it's from the city's municipal code directly and not a third-party website. So what this is describing is that, the ADUs and junior ADUs are permitted in these zones, R1 all the way to R4, and then your multifamily zones 3, 4, and R1H. So across California, the ADUs are permitted in most, if not all, residential zones, mixed use zones, or basically as long as you have residential or a proposed residence on your property. Let's see. The on-site parking.
Yeah, parking is very important. We hear that from our clients a lot. And the rule is essentially the same. You don't have to replace the on-site parking that you're taking away. To be sure that, what do you want to do, Helen?
So in this case, it's the same rules all across California that normally there is a requirement of one spot for the ADU. However, there are a lot of exemptions to get you out of that, which most properties fall under.
Like this exemption here, the accessory dwelling unit is located within 1/2 mile walking distance of public transit. That's what we usually use, right?
Exactly.
To determine if parking is required.
Right, especially.
It's a rule of thumb. If you're within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, like a bus stop, you should be good.
Exactly, which I think 99, if not all percent of multifamily dwellings fall under this rule. Very rarely do I see a single family house, maybe if it's up in the hills or a more rural area, that does not meet this. There are other kind of exemptions that you could fall under, or even if you end up as a single family home needing parking, tandem parking even on the driveway uncovered is still acceptable. So even in that 1% case where you do need it, there is always availability, at least on your driveway or something.
You know, I like this part here. I'm going to highlight it. And I've been hearing about it a lot from our clients. They want to know if they can install mechanical automobile parking lifts so that they can, take the parking away to build, but still keep it for the convenience of the tenant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to look into.
Right, and we've actually checked on this in areas such as coastal zones, that right now what the coastal zones are requiring, sorry to be a little tangential, but coastal zones, at least most of them, are requiring that you maintain the existing number of parking spots. So that is something in relation to the parking rules. It's not in Burbank, so if you're in Burbank, you don't have to worry about that. But coastal zones are looking into these parking lifts, which may help you with any parking rules the coastal zones.
Yeah, and sort of to piggyback on that, I find the most difficult planning and permitting for these projects happens in the coastal zone. Is that right?
Right, I wouldn't say difficult. I would just say parking is one area that they make you can't eliminate the parking basically like you can in all of these cities or Burbank, just because you're close to a bus stop. Yeah. They make sure you maintain the existing number.
Right, and I think the reasoning behind that is that the Coastal Commission wants to ensure that there's access to the coastal resources.
Right. So that's basically it. But as David mentioned, one of the biggest exemptions is if your property is located within a 1/2 mile of public transit, such as a bus stop, then you do not have to add any additional parking. And as we're going to get into with the locations where you can put the ADUs, if you are using a garage or a carport for the purpose of an ADU, you do not have to replace those parking spots either. So let's see. As far as sizing goes, and it'll go into a little bit more detail once it's describing the single family and multifamily. But let's see. They do have a cap on detached ADUs of 850 square feet for, I believe it's studios or 1 bedrooms. But if you have more than 1 bedroom, their maximum is 1,000 square feet. I usually really just follow the larger one because it's not like anybody wants a 1,000 square foot studio. So your maximum in Burbank for a detached ADU is 1,000 square feet, which is plenty. That can still be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. The living room might not be that large, but you'll still be able to get the number of bedrooms.
Not as attractive as Los Angeles' 1,200 square foot limit, right?
Right. However, from what I've seen, at least between the 1,000 and 1,200, there is that difference of construction cost, and you are still getting, our requests are still 3.2s for both. So I always like to say, why spend more for the same thing if you could get the exact rental income from a 3.2 1,000? It would still make sense construction wise, unless the owner is
1,000. Is that enough?
Yeah, we've designed that, and again, the common areas may not be as large, but it can still have an open concept of the kitchen and living room.
You're right.
With the bedrooms.
I guess if you have an open concept kitchen, living room area, that's enough.
Right.
And then you get three
decent sized bedrooms. 3 decent sized bedrooms. Exactly. 1
ensuite bathroom and then 1 shared.
Yeah, or whatever the owners prefer, we will design. let's see, when an ADU is attached to the existing primary dwelling unit, which I'll go into more detail later, but this is only permitted for single family homes. The max size again is 1,000 square feet. 1,000 square feet as well. And I believe this, when they say attached, this may be describing new construction attached to the house. I don't think it's discussing conversions, but we'll see and confirm. Let's see. If you have a balcony, porch, or patio with your ADU, they're saying, and if it's covered, it will count towards your ADU square footage. So this comes into play when you do want to build any type of exterior space that's connected to it. It does take away from the living space square footage, but it still may bring a lot of value and benefit for that outdoor space.
And maybe I could talk about subsection G here on height.
Sure.
This is where the meat really is. So all ADUs that are attached to the main dwelling, item number 1, not really concerned about. Item 2, when an ADU is constructed on top of a detached garage or accessory structure, the ADU can be up to 23 feet high. That's great because that means you can get a decent sized parking garage and then a beautiful high ceiling, open concept ADU on top of the garage. So you don't lose if you're covering up surface parking, and you're putting in a great sized ADU. It'll have these architectural features that will really bring you premium rent. So that 23 foot maximum is great. Also here, I'm looking, when an ADU is constructed on top of a garage or accessory structure, the ADU cannot touch grade level. I see that here, very, very similar to other statutes that we've looked at.
Yeah, so I think they don't want it to be like on the side and above. It just has to be strictly above the detached garage.
And you can only do 1-story ADU, it looks like. All new detached ADUs not constructed on top of an attached garage shall be no more than 1 story with a maximum height of 12 feet from grade level and a maximum height of 17. Oh, interesting.
Right. So they don't exactly. I saw this recently as they updated their ordinance. They do not want just 2-story standalone ADUs in Burbank. However, because they do allow it on top of a garage, you can still do 2nd-story ADUs.
You know, that's so weird because I'm looking at item number 2. When an ADU is constructed on top of a detached garage, accessory structure, or above another ADU when applicable under this code. It seems conflicting, numbers 2 and 3 here.
Right. They may be saying that you can do both together 2-story, but you can't have one ADU that's 2 stories. We'll have to confirm this because
very interesting.
It is a little fuzzy here on between 2 and 3, like you pointed out. But that was from my understanding, at least.
And then moving on to number H here, setbacks. This is pretty common everywhere. The setbacks are the state's rule.
Yes and no. Burbank does have one difference. So yes, it follows the 4. So setbacks are, how far from your property lines that you can build. Burbank follows the regular state rule of the 4 feet for side and rear setbacks. However, one difference that they do have compared to other cities, so again, this is something very specific to Burbank, is the building separation. They have a 5-foot building separation as opposed to, I guess, the standard 6 foot, or some cities even say 10 to 15 feet.
Yeah,
Burbank
6 to 10 is what we've been seeing. Los
Mhm.
Angeles is 6. I'm trying to think of the other cities off the top of my head that are at 10. I can't think
Huntington
of it now.
Beach, I believe, is 10.
But 5, that's so permissive.
Right, 5.
San
that extra foot does
Diego is
help.
even worse, right? In San Diego, can't you be attached to the existing structure?
San Diego, yeah, they don't. San Diego actually does not
Or a
push
setback for that matter.
setbacks. Yeah, or I believe even building separation. So it's a case by case basis.
That's for a
there.
different show, right?
But in this case, what's also, I believe, so the last thing, because we're working on a project or 2 in Burbank. So within this 5-foot building separation, something that it was at least permitted about a year ago when we started certain plans was Burbank. Again, this is Burbank specific. The stairway. So if you're building on top of a detached garage or just a detached structure, they were allowing the external staircase to be in the building separation. I have not seen this in any other city. Typically, external stairways are not permitted in any of your setbacks or your building separation. So we usually have to design them within the structure. If it's a carport, we would have to put it in the center of the carport, for example, or just build, whatever the building separation is, and then even further in order to fit in that certain.
Yeah, I'm seeing here number 8 doesn't say anything about building separation.
Right,
just
setbacks.
Like
Just the setbacks, exactly. And I've with our project a year ago, I spoke with planning, and they said it was permitted in the building separation, which I personally like because I feel it still allows any ingress and egress around it, any fire safety, anything like that. But then we can still fit the external stairway there without taking away more parking or losing one spot.
Restrictive covenants. This is talking about if the state requires or allows restrictive covenants, this provision shall spring back into effect. But the state right now prohibits restrictive covenants, so we're good.
Right, and you cannot sell your ADU separately. This is for all properties. Owner occupancy laws only pertain to junior ADUs, which I will describe as soon as we get to that section. But the regular ADUs do not have owner occupancy requirements. This is a statewide law, so the owner does not have to live in the house or the ADU, actually. So let's see, I'm just going to kind of breeze through here. This is just talking about design standards. In most cities, your ADU has to match, at least architecturally, the exterior of what your primary residence looks like. Let me see. In Burbank alone, your ADU or junior ADU is not permitted. Let me see. Is not permitted in the mountain fire zones unless you meet these requirements. So you have a maximum. They reduce the size of what you're allowed to do. And you have to do brush clearance requirements if you want to build in your mountain fire zones. So let's see. So here's now kind of the juicier parts of where a lot of our questions derive from.
The horse keeping part here? Is that the juicy part? The horse keeping?
Oh, not necessarily the horse keeping, but Burbank is a big, equestrian zone. It's just that this is the same for any single family standards, regardless.
I think this is the meat, right? We're talking about subsection O here.
Yes, but that's for multifamily. Let me see. Okay. Well, regardless, for single family homes, you can only do one ADU and one junior ADU. Let me see. And I guess related to horse keeping, and if you do have a horse property, R1H, you cannot do new construction ADUs unless you meet these requirements. So conversions are permitted, but it makes sense if it's a horse property, they don't want you building new structures there.
Oh, so you can convert a pool house, a recreation room, a barn, a stable.
No, shall not be permitted.
Oh, you can't. You can't convert your corral.
No.
What about your tap room?
So unfortunately, if
can you convert your tap room?
you know what, this is actually funny because in many of my old videos, I've actually used a barn as an example if you have a legally permitted barn, but I guess that's in Los Angeles and other areas only. Unfortunately, if you have a barn in Burbank, it looks like you cannot convert your barn or stable. Which is good. They're protecting the horses and their land. You don't want to minimize.
Or your corral. What's a corral?
I'm not sure. Is that the area where they're kept?
I'll have to look that up.
It might be where they're kept. I could be wrong. Interesting. For pool house, we've had a few, but I guess this is just for R1H zones. But as far as how many you can do for horse zone and the regular single family zones, it still applies. For single family homes, you can do one ADU or one junior ADU. Check. So when it comes to multifamily properties, you can do.
And this is pretty much standard, right? You have the right to do 2 detached and up to 25%.
Yes.
That's pretty much. the state
Yes,
law.
exactly. So state law says you can do up to 2 detached ADUs. So in multifamily properties, this has to be away from your primary residence. And as we saw here, minimum 5 feet away from the primary building. Since it does have a reduced building separation in Burbank. So no more than 2 detached ADUs. And again, with that 1,000 square foot maximum that you can do. But as this says here, the ADUs can be attached to each other like a duplex. They just can't be attached to the building. And then if you're doing attached, in multifamily language, this means internal conversions. So you can do at least 1 or up to 25% of your existing number of units. This really only is considered when you have 8 units or above, because everything else is rounded down. So as soon as you hit 8 units, existing legal units, that's when the 25% rule really makes sense. So after 8 units is when you can actually do more conversion ADUs. So if you have 8 units, you can do 2. If you have 9 units, you can also do 2, along with the up to 2, because I don't see Burbank restricting which configuration that you do. So it looks like you can do both. And I think last time I checked, Burbank is really trying to increase housing in Burbank as well.
The whole state, for that matter.
Yeah, of course, but some cities are more resistant to allow as many as possible, whereas some, like San Diego, we described, are eliminating a lot of the red tape to make it easier. Burbank, I believe they really do want to increase housing in Burbank. They've even teamed up with solar companies, and I believe Burbank, the city itself, are also constructing their own ADUs on city-owned properties.
Really?
Yes.
Why aren't we building those for them?
We can find out, and who knows, maybe we will be
Yes.
Burbank's trusted contractor. That would be fun. So again, that's for multifamily properties, which is much different for single family, but this is across the board for California. Attached means internal conversions. You cannot change the footprint of your building. You cannot change the envelope of your building. You can't build new construction and attach it to your apartment building. You can only do internal conversions of tuck under parking, garages, boiler rooms, storage rooms, rec rooms, or just do it detached.
Yeah, passageways I see here.
Yes.
Common areas. We've had a lot of interest in common areas and passageways recently.
Yes. Yeah, which, again, if you have a large passageway or just...
It's not just a garage.
Lounge area.
It's not like just a garage anymore or an unused storage room.
Right.
You can be very creative with the number of places you could add ADUs.
And as David mentioned earlier with the height limit, this is, again, very specific to Burbank because most cities adopted the 16-foot height restriction. Burbank did not. So this really helps with building on top of detached garages or carports, for example. You can preserve the parking. We can put the stairway and building separation if needed, which I'll confirm again every year. I still like to confirm certain things in case something changed. But you can still build easily and have higher ceilings, no grading or excavating needed unless we just have to reinforce footings and so forth. So now this is going into junior ADUs. I will just quickly sum this up because I believe this is the same all across the board. Junior ADUs, as mentioned before, there are owner occupancy requirements. The owner must live in either the house or the junior ADU. Junior ADU, you are limited to 500 square feet. And again, it has to be part of the internal structure of your house. It can't be detached, can't be new construction. The junior ADU is not permitted in multifamily properties. You basically don't want it to because it has owner occupancy requirements. So we get this question a lot of multifamily property owners still wanting to capitalize on the junior ADU. It is not permitted in multifamily properties. Yes,
not happening. That's right.
And you can do at least one with your single family home. I'm going to kind of see here in case they have a requirement that if you do a junior ADU, if your regular ADU has to be detached, which a lot of cities do. But if I don't see it, I can always confirm if you do have a single family home in Burbank and you would like to add both. So again, it has to be constructed within the existing walls of your house. It has to have its own exterior entrance. It has to have at least an efficiency kitchen. However, something junior ADUs do not have to have, something the junior ADU does not have to have, it doesn't have to have its own bathroom. So it can actually share a bathroom with the house. So it would have to have access within the junior ADU to the rest of the house. So this might be helpful if, a family member is staying there or something like that. And all across the board in California, ADUs are not permitted to be short-term rentals. So you can't do ADUs and Airbnb them, at least legally, you cannot do that. And this looks like this is very specific to Burbank.
Oh, 90 days, yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen something of this great length. Across California, they have a minimum rental period for your ADUs of 30 days. I believe Burbank really has been cracking down on short-term rentals and Airbnbs and so forth. So this is one of the longest terms I've ever seen. Burbank is saying you cannot rent your ADU for less than 90 days, actually. So they don't want any type of short-term rental whatsoever in Burbank. So that is all. So that is all for Burbank, California ADUs.
Am I in the frame?
If you have any questions or anything, please feel free to type it. Otherwise, I will let David just briefly cover SB 326 and SB 721 balcony and deck inspections.
Yeah, very briefly. We've been doing balcony and deck inspections for quite some time now. I've personally done several of them myself. I guess personally and myself is redundant. But yeah, I've done a lot of them. What I've seen, for the most part, is a lot of property owners keep great care of their property, but a lot of people don't. So if you're at all concerned about any sort of liability that you might have for balconies that are substandard or that are falling apart, give us a call. We're happy to come out and do the initial inspection with you and to do any follow-up inspections. So
if you could just describe, David, what has to be inspected.
Exterior elevated elements made of wood. Essentially, if you have anything that protrudes out of your building envelope that's made out of wood, it's going to have the load-bearing components as well as the waterproofing components inspected. Load-bearing components, posts, beams, girders, footings, stuff like that must be inspected. Waterproofing elements, you're looking at flashing, decking, caulking and sealing, and stuff like that.
Right. So as David mentioned,
that's a very quick and dirty sort of explanation of what we're looking at.
But these are things such as balconies, decks, catwalks, walkways, stairways, at least 6 feet from ground level. For condos, most of them, if not all, have to be inspected for condominium buildings. For apartments under SB 721, it is 15%. Is that correct, David?
Yes.
15% of each element.
That's right.
So it's not just 15% of the elements in general. It's 15% of your small balconies, 15% of your exposed stairways, 15% of your decks, and so forth.
Have you been out with us on an inspection?
Yes, I have, and it was very informative.
Very good.
Yes. So that is about it. I put our numbers here, but we're all one company. Our main name is One Structural. These are all of our divisions: Retrofit 1, ADU1, Balcony 1. I know I haven't described retrofitting much, but if you still need seismic retrofitting, we've done over 400, if not more at this point, retrofit projects. You can combine it with your ADUs, and we actually tie it all in. If you do the ADU, we help you out with your balcony inspections as well, or at least the report. So give us a call. If you just want balconies directly, please call 323-BALCONY. Any of our other divisions, call this number or email, and you will get to, honestly, you'll reach any of our divisions through these numbers. Yes. We're all the same group, and we're here to help.
You'll reach the office.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll reach the office. So very good.
Thank you again for joining us. I'm Helen. This is David. We're One Structural with our divisions Retrofit 1, ADU1, and Balcony 1. And I will see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.